Okay, I'm going to take the moderator's prerogative, and I'm going to read a quick email that Rob Paulberg sent to me, because I think it'll fit in here and maybe be a nice transition. He wrote, "My main point is that commercial farming in both Europe and the United States has been changing dramatically in recent decades. We have seen on our most productive farms an increased use of GPS-linked precision application systems, drip irrigation, laser-leveled fields, conservation tillage, and GM crops that require fewer chemical applications for pest and weed control. The result bears little resemblance to the older style of dirty, conventional farming correctly criticized by Rachel Carson 45 years ago. Our modern move to precision farming is a strong move towards environmental sustainability, driven more by market forces than by environmental regulation. Parentheses, farming in America in particular is seriously underregulated. Most important, this move towards sustainability did not come from using less science in farming or from adopting organic or agroecology approaches on small farms so as to imitate nature. Instead, it has come from using more science on even more heavily capitalized farms." So that was Rob's big point. And then we can move on to Chuck.
Great. I decided at lunch, and I'm going to hold off on comment on that because I think it's a fabulous statement. I decided at lunch to break all panel discussion protocol and change completely what I was going to say, for two reasons. A, I have the luxury of being at the end of the day and in a topic that's called pulling it all together. And rather than pull it all together before I got here, I've decided to pull it a little bit together based on what I heard through the lens that I bring to this. So I'm going to talk about some things I've heard and how it starts to pull together for me. And I'm going to talk a little bit just about the word resilience. And I'm not going to answer what resiliency means. I am going to give a couple thoughts. The other protocol that I always break is I pick on people in the audience who sometimes I know, sometimes I don't. So Tim from Campbell's, raise your hand. I'm going to pick on Tim. Tim doesn't know me. Congratulations. This goes out to the Campbell Company. I believe, if my research is right, you guys are celebrating your 140th year in business this year. So that's resilience. Howard from Mars. You guys got a couple years to plan your centennial celebration, I believe, if my research is right, on the Mars Corporation. Fabulous. I don't know that anyone from my peer company, Kellogg's, is here, but this certainly has Kellogg behind it from a foundation standpoint. They celebrated their 100th anniversary 3 years ago. My company celebrated our 140th anniversary 3 years ago. So when we think about resilience, there's some food companies around this industry who I think are very resilient. They've lived through a number of decades of change in the environment, change in consumer behavior, change in the supply system, change in retailing. To me, that speaks of one area of resilience. Here's how I look at this in terms of what I hear. A little bit about who I am, because I'm a little bit of a different background than many of the other panel members have been. To answer that, I'm going to first tell you what I'm not and who I'm not. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a labor expert. I'm not an economist. I'm not a policy expert. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not an academic, which means I've spent a good portion of the morning writing down words I've never heard of before. Here's who I am. I consider myself, like many of you do, whether you work for a company, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a policy expert, I consider myself a business person. I've been proud to have spent the last 20 years working with my company, with our suppliers, and with our retailers, doing what I think is great work, which is bringing affordable, quality, nutritious, convenient food to consumers. That's what I view my role has been for 20 years in this industry. Specifically right now, what my responsibility is at General Mills is I'm responsible for helping to understand what our impact is of sourcing ingredients and materials, producing products, transporting them to our customers, getting them into consumers' homes and having them consumed. My responsibility is understanding what that impact is and how I can identify meaningful changes to improve that impact. That's what I spend every day, whether I'm in my office or on planes, more often than not in places like this, understanding that and trying to figure out how we create a system that allows companies like mine to make those changes. So that's who I am. Let me tell you a little bit about what I heard today, and I'm going to first start with things that scared me. And when I say they scared me, it either means I might have disagreed with them, either vehemently or slightly, or I might not have just fully understood everything behind them. So it started out, Tom, are you still around? I told you I like to pick on people, including people who organize things and run them. I'm going to pick on Tom. Tom scared me to death when he started off saying, turn off your cell phones. So because then I read into it a little bit and I realized I could turn off my cell phone, but I could still check email. So I knew, and I know I'm not alone in that, so don't judge me. The second thing I heard, and it's not in order of when I heard them, I heard potentially some thoughts around is our food safe? Or maybe it's not safe, or maybe we don't know. I heard a lot of talk on farmers markets and CSAs, maybe in those things being good, and maybe large supermarkets or super centers not being as good. I don't know if that's true or not. I'll tell you from my perspective, this will be the first year that I'm actually part of a CSA, and I live in Minnesota. My CSA is going to be different than the Northern California CSA, which means my challenge this year will be to figure out how many different uses for kale I can find. It is different based on the person and where you are. I heard fresh, nutritious, often linked together. I would challenge us to think about nutritious as being really the key part of that. When it comes to food, nutrition is really paramount. Fresh is one way of getting that. I would argue that so is frozen, so is canned, so is dried. So I'd challenge us to think about that fresh, nutritious don't always have to go together. The important part is nutritious. I heard a lot around small, local, organic, good, can be, in my belief. I believe that doesn't mean that big and conventional, as your script that you read from the email would suggest that precision farming might be good and likely is showing some good things. I heard, I'm going to pick on somebody else, Tom Kelly mentioned Keystone, the Keystone Initiative, field to market for those of you who are familiar with it, and that no academic institutions are represented. And what I challenge you to is to reach out to your colleagues at University of Wisconsin and University of Arkansas, both institutions heavily involved in that initiative. And I don't know if Oren's still here. I'm not going to have him raise his hand in case he stepped out. Oren said maybe the scariest thing for me and some others, which is the system is broken. That was an early thing we heard today. And I pick on Oren because it transitions me into the things that I heard that give me hope. So Oren scared me when he made that statement that the system is broken. He also gave me hope in what he said following that, which is we need to be able to measure so that we know the changes we are making are having the desired impact. I couldn't agree more. I think that's really in the belief of what I take away from here today is this is about better information. We heard that I mentioned, I view myself as a business person. So for me, information is critical, and that means understanding where we're currently at. Work we do right now with the Keystone Initiative is part of that. The first step is to measure where we're currently at. The second part is to search for where things are better. So where in the system are things working better? And then finally, our role is to analyze why is that the case? What practices are in place that allows some part of the system to perform better than another? And then finally, we have really that next step is how do you determine if those differences in practices or technologies can be replicated to other areas or scaled up. And I view that as really the critical part of this is we need to have better information, but we need to take it all the way through. Can we replicate it once we know what works in certain areas?
Great. Thanks, Chuck.